Welcome to Smart to Fish Wild, a podcast where a passion for the outdoors meets the strategy of building a meaningful, well-designed life. I'm Mark Candler, Colorado native, outdoorsman, passionate fly fisherman, proud father, and senior partner of Silver Oak Wealth Planning. Each week, I have the real pleasure of sitting down with some amazing people who are turning their passion into purpose and designing lives that leave room for what matters the most. Today, I'm hosting Ryan Nunn, head of Publisher Partnership with Arity, and we're talking about lessons in humility, patience, and lifelong learning, while also touching on career risks and life decisions. Today's conversation is meaningful because it connects outdoor experiences with broader themes of mental clarity, resilience, and purpose. So sit back and enjoy the conversation, and I hope you find value. So Ryan, so psyched to host you, and thanks for your time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the invite, and it's good to be here.
Yeah, and we've chatted a little bit before, and I enjoyed your story about how you just kind of stumbled into fly fishing and the impact that it made on you.
Yeah, still stumbling.
Do you mind sharing with us kind of how you and your friends got into it?
Yeah. So, we grew up spending time outdoors, mostly camping. We grew up down in Southern California, so a lot of time at the beach, a lot of time in the woods near Bishop. And when we were about 29, 30, we decided let's try our hand at fly fishing. I'd never fished much in my life, occasionally off a boat with my grandpa in Oregon, but really getting into this completely inexperienced and fresh. And so we booked a trip to Darby, Montana, first time in Montana. And we were on the West Fork of the Bitterroot, and we just decided let's buy some $200, Reddington path rods and plastic fly reels and go out there and see if we can make something happen. And it was a fun trip. I would say I probably hooked myself more times than I hooked fish, but I did hook one cutthroat trout that changed my opinion about fly fishing forever. That was about that big, not my largest catch, but it was seeing the take off the dry fly. And even though it was, tiny, just that's what got me hooked. I was like, wow, this is incredibly satisfying. And then my journey over the last, 9-10 years fly fishing, it's really become more of a therapy, and it's changed my life, not just personal life, but I would say my professional life as well.
Awesome story. Yeah, well, how has it changed your life personally and professionally?
It really has provided that outlet, that therapy. And, a little background, I work corporate jobs. And so my brain is always turning, the wheels are always going. And the only time I've been able to really shut it down and just focus and be super present in the moment is when I'm standing in the river and I'm focusing on everything that's right in front of me. And the beauty, and this as a lifelong fly fisherman, you got to be so focused on what is happening in front of you, reading the water, finding where I want to put my fly, watching my drift, making sure that I'm mending and the drift isn't getting funky. And I got to just be so present the whole time that everything else that I'm thinking about disappears. And it's the only activity that I do where 8 hours goes by in the blink of an eye.
You nailed it. That is, no, I have, the exact same experience, and I've done it, 54 years now, or 53 or whatever. So I've been fortunate to do a lot of fly fishing, and, people I work with or people who know me professionally, they just like, oh my God, how can you fly fish? You are like ADHD, like major type A, flying off the wheel in every direction. And I'm like, I don't know. It's just, I can sit there. We went up to Basalt years ago with a group of friends, and nobody was doing all that well. And so people wanted to go grab lunch and some beers. And I spotted this 7-8 pound rainbow that I just kept casting and casting and casting to. And probably went through 25 flies. And my friends are like, hey, Candyman, let's go grab some beers and lunch. I'm like, I'm not moving. I've got the trophy of my life. I will not move. So they came back a couple hours later, and I was still casting. Same fish, had moved a little bit, but I finally got him, finally landed him.
You're speaking my language, because I get made fun of by my buddies for exactly that. I will see a spot or a fish holding and go, I'm not leaving this spot until I catch that fish.
Yeah. And, the flip side, if I have to wait, 7 minutes in a long line at 7-Eleven, I'm like going absolutely insane. I hate waiting in lines. I'm so impatient. It's an
Same.
embarrassment. But fly fishing just soothes.
And I joke with my wife about that. I said, if God put me on the earth to learn one lesson, it's patience.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what's been your biggest mistake in fly fishing?
Yeah, this one hurts a little bit because I'm a little bit embarrassed and ashamed to admit it, but, I was actually in Ridgway, Colorado, up in your neck of the woods in Colorado on a road trip back home to Montana, and I decided to do a little fishing on the Uncompahgre, I think is the river up there, and I was in the fly shop just getting a couple flies and talking to the guys in the shop, and this older gentleman walked in, and I think, he had just picked up fly fishing. And I think that week, because he walked in and said, "Hey, I don't know how to tie my flies on my line. Can you help me out?" And instead of me thinking, "Oh, I should invite this guy to come fish with me. I'm about to head down to the river now and maybe I can help him get into it." I was so arrogant at that moment because I just gotten to the point fly fishing where I felt like you could put me on most water and I'm going to find a way to catch fish. And so instead of having the like inclusive, "Hey, let me help you out," I was like, "Oh, I can't believe that guy can't tie his own flies on his rig." And I reflected on it later that night and I was like, "Man, that was a real missed opportunity," and I was embarrassed.
That's very kind that
It's gonna stick with me for the rest of my life. Like,
you
even think about it.
reflected on it and knew
Yeah.
knew you made an error.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I've
that's
been
all.
so lucky to have people in my life, especially in Montana, that they've taken me under their wing and taught me how to be a better fisherman, how to be a better angler, better conservationist. And for me to, in that moment, not pass it on, biggest mistake so far.
Yeah, I had an experience when I was 20 and I went up to Montana to guide in West Yellowstone, the famous Bud Lilly's trout shop. And I was way, way down the totem pole at the very bottom rung. And the only way I was guiding it was obviously if the 8 other guides were booked,
Right.
but super popular fly shop. So I was probably out there, I don't know, 3 or 4 days out of 7, and working in the fly shop the other times and drove up there. And the owner, Jim Kreiner, says, "Hey, kid," that's what I'm going to call you, kid. That's what everybody called me, kid. Do you actually know how to row a boat? And I was like, it's good to be real honest. No, sir, I do not. And he's like, okay, I'm going to have Jim Kreiner train you for the next 3 days. I've already got it all lined up. And I was like, okay. He's like, he's 61 years old, captain of a fire department in LA. And I think he's fished this river, I don't know, 51 years. I was like, oh my God. Driving down to the river, hauling a drift boat, Jim says, "Hey kid, I'd like to make a bet. I'm competitive. Whoever catches more fish gets a free steak dinner at Eno's." And I was like, reflecting. And I'm like, well, sir, I'm not foolish enough to go for a 1-to-1 bet with a guy who's fished as much as you have, but I'd do a 2-to-1, and I'm sure he had like just laughing through his nose. And we shook hands and we get on the river. And the count at the end of the day was Jim 84, Mark 7. My entire ego just blew up. I
Yeah.
mean, it just popped the balloon, but it didn't depress me at all. I was just like, "Oh my God." I thought I was like a good fly fisherman
Yeah.
because I usually would outfish my friends in Colorado, but oh my God. I mean, it was, yeah, depressing that it's like, dude, you're not even on the field in single A baseball. You're like water boy for single A baseball in the fly fishing world.
Yeah.
But it turned me on the other side, it's like, "Oh my God, I have so much to learn." And
Which
I
is
feel that way.
exciting. Best part. Oh, there's
Yeah,
so much to learn.
I feel that way today.
Yeah.
I mean,
Same.
we had this kid, Jack Arnott, who won like international gold medal as a junior. He was on the USA team in the Czech Republic, and he did a seminar on international competitive casting techniques. And that was another session where I just shook my head and I'm just like, wow, in terms of fly fishing education, I am so far from a graduate or a PhD degree.
It's the
I
beauty of
got
it,
so
though.
much.
Yeah, and I joke with my buddies about it because we're competitive a little bit with each other, but we joke that we could do this every day for the rest of our lives, and
Right.
we're still not gonna learn everything.
Yeah. And just learn, 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 learn all the time.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
the
I've
the
had the honor
I
fishing
was
with
gonna ask.
fishing with Pat Dorsey, who's would say certainly the most famous guide in the state of Colorado, and that guy is just a terabytes of data about fishing. I mean, the guy is just he knows everything there ever was. He's phenomenal. Did I ever shoot you the video that we had made with him?
No, I don't think so.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, please. Now, I was gonna ask you when you did this seminar on international casting, I know a lot of that is like long line Euro. What was some of the things you took away from the casting seminar?
You know, I'm founder and chairman of this gentleman's fly fishing social club called Boonfly, and
Mhm.
it was a Boonfly event, and I was helping run it. So honestly, I was kind of running around the event like a chicken with my head cut off, and I really didn't get to listen to it all.
That's too bad.
He was talking about, like, I recall, like, a J hook, a reverse J hook, like 15 feet of leader, and the funny thing is I came up to a couple buddies that are just exceptional fly fishermen, far better than I am. And I'm like, "So Cody, what'd you think?" And he's like, "I think I don't know how to fly fish."
Had a
I was
couple
like,
of those moments myself for sure.
"Yeah, yeah." It's like, "Oh, Cody, you know how to fly fish." Yeah. So what's the most important lesson you've learned from fly fishing? Is that patience?
Patience is one of them, but truthfully, it's humility and how to suck at something again. Part of my impatience was I didn't have patience for not being good at something for most of my life, and I was very blessed growing up to be, a good athlete and good at most things I tried my hand at. I was terrible at fly fishing I'm probably still terrible at fly fishing. But it taught me to find the joy in the learning and the process and just being comfortable not being good at something. And it opened up so many other doors because hunting is the same thing. I started hunting in my early 30s. So I've only been doing it for about 6, 7 years. And of course, like anytime you start something new, you're going to suck at it. And that's just part of the process, part of the journey. And getting comfortable with that has made starting new things so much easier.
That's a great perspective. I love your humility.
Well, again, it comes from sucking at something for a long time.
Yeah. I've from Colorado, fourth generation native, and I've been blessed to ski most of my life. I Colorado natives who ski a bunch, we just laugh at this. Like when you're out at a restaurant or a bar and you meet somebody, from out of state, and you're like, "Are you a good skier?" And their answer is like, "Oh, I'm a great skier." You're like, "Oh my God, I will go on 100 to 1 odds right now. You're awful." No great skier ever says I'm a great skier. If you
It's the
talk to
same on
somebody, you
water.
ask them and you go, "Yeah, well, I live here. I've skied a bunch. I love it." You're like, "Ooh, watch out."
Yeah.
But
Well,
the
it's
people
funny.
who brag, you're like, "Oh god, never
Yeah.
seen one of you talks like that that is actually good." Same thing
It's
in
funny.
fly fishing. It's like, "Oh, I have a passion for it." You're
Yeah.
watch out.
It's funny. I went fishing with a guide up in Montana last year because I was itching to get on the water and do some floating, and I couldn't get any of my friends to come out to Montana to go on a float. So I was like, all right, well, I'm just gonna go book a guide, and we did the Clark Fork. And he calls me up the night before, and he says, hey, so just want to get a sense of hey, what do you do for lunch? Hey, just want to get a sense of your skill level. Like, do you fish much? How much you out there? And I said something to the effect of like, oh, I try to get out there a decent amount. I've been doing some Euro nymphing, so I feel like my dry fly casting's kind of taking a back seat and I'm, not as good as I want to be. And he goes, okay, okay, sure. We get out on the river and I throw a few casts and we're throwing droppers. So it's, a hopper dropper, the classic Montana guide fly setup. And I throw a few casts and he goes, okay, I had a feeling. And I'm like, what? He goes, well, you didn't say you fish very much and you kind of downplayed it. And usually those are the guys that know how to fish. And the guys that come in and say, oh, every year I get out to the river and I've been doing it for 20 years. And they do the one trip a year for 20 years and are just, flailing around out there. So it's like usually the guys that downplay it and don't, say that, don't say too much, they usually know what they're doing. I was like, okay, well, I appreciate the compliment.
So just switching gears, how has fly fishing impacted your thoughts about conservation?
Yeah, quite a bit. When I was living out in California, obviously they kind of tout themselves as an environmental state, and so I wasn't super active in thinking about conservation because I assumed, mostly incorrectly, that the government was looking out for conservation. Moving to Montana, I'm much more aware of what's happening around the state on the waterways, especially because in Montana, especially in the Bitterroot Valley, it's a river economy, and so the livelihood of agriculture and recreation guides who take people out on the rivers is dependent upon that water being in a healthy state and that fishery being healthy. And then there's probably a little bit too of pride in where I live as well, because I look at people coming into the state and really extracting resources without providing a lot of value back to Montanans, and that just kind of rubs me the wrong way. Even though, like I said, I grew up in California, I've only lived in Montana for a few years. I really love the place and I love the people and I love the way they think about conservation and access. It's one of the few states where you can access the river, and as long as you're in the river from the high water mark, you can walk through private property and access those fisheries. Not a lot of states out there have that level of access for anglers, and so I just, I value it, and fishing has done so much for me personally that I want other people to be able to experience those benefits, and preserving access and those fisheries is critical to that.
Very well stated. What is going on currently that is, I guess, scaring the conservationists? What's the big threat?
Yeah. And this is specific to the Bitterroot Valley and my home. And some of the organizations are doing great work, like Bitterroot Trout Unlimited is doing fantastic work. The Montana Wildlife Federation are doing fantastic work to try to halt some of the proposed rare earth mineral mines that are being proposed at the headwaters of the Bitterroot. And specifically, it's the Sheep Creek mine. And I'm not as educated as other people, so I'm going to speak from my understanding, and I'm going to get things wrong. So if anyone knows more than me or is listening, sorry. But Bitterroot Trout Unlimited has done a great job of spreading the news to anyone who signed up for the newsletter on the progress of the Sheep Creek mine in the Bitterroot Valley. And right now it's kind of in the stages of proposal, but it was fast tracked by the federal government. And I'm not going to, be able to say what program, but it has been put on the fast track. And so Bitterroot Trout Unlimited has done a great job of trying to make people aware of what is happening, the status of that mining proposal project, and also educating people on the potential harms that come with these mines. And they're also doing a great job of some bipartisan negotiation and trying to suggest alternatives and not just say, hey, don't do it, but hey, don't do it. Here's an alternative that is more conservation minded and probably easier in the long run for extracting those rare earth minerals and can bring actual benefit to the state of Montana, which is a mining economy outside of Butte. So, I think they're doing a great job of trying to find solutions, not just be obstinate and say, don't do it, but also say, hey, don't do it. Here's an alternative path. And let's work together to try to explore these alternative paths that are better for you, the company who is extracting the minerals, and the state of Montana and Montanans. So I've been really impressed with the work they're doing.
Wow. So you're involved with them?
I'm a member of Bitterroot Trout Unlimited. I try to support them through donations and they do a yearly auction, and mostly it benefits the Bitterroot buggers, which is getting kids involved in fly fishing and conservation. And so I always try to participate in those activities to support the local chapter. And no shade to Trout Unlimited, the Nationals. It's a great organization, but supporting the local chapter and the initiatives that they take on in my home is really important.
Very cool. One of the podcasts I've done, a couple podcasts with Trout Unlimited, David Nickham, their executive director for Colorado Trout Unlimited over the whole state of Colorado and 22 chapters below that. And I've also done a podcast with Barbara Luno, who's chairman of the board of, the larger Colorado Trout Unlimited.
Right
And
on.
I think she's up on Spotify and YouTube. You might want to listen to her because she's got a passionate fire in her belly about, really educating kids and, high schoolers and college kids, really bringing up the next generation of, passionate conservationists. And they've got an incredible program. I think it's Natalie is the head of that, and Cliff Watson is also involved with it. They do Trout in the Classroom.
Hmm.
You ever heard of that?
I haven't. What is Trout in the Classroom?
So they provide, like, I don't know the specifics, but huge tanks and, the appropriate water and coolant, and literally create like natural trout habitat. And
Wow.
sorry about that.
No worries.
And, place fertilized eggs in there. And so the school children throughout the course of the year get to see the whole life cycle. And then at a certain point, I don't know if it's 6 months or exactly when it is, but they capture those fingerlings, and then they're part of going out and releasing them, you know, in the streams. So, I mean, what an incredible execution by Trout Unlimited to, you know, like, that's the coolest thing in the classroom. Every kid's got to pay attention to it, right? Every
Yeah.
kid's got to appreciate it. So I think it's just phenomenal, some of the things they're doing.
Yeah, that's a wonderful program.
Yeah, and they've got an incredible youth camp. It's a week-long youth camp that I tried to get my 16-year-old daughter to go. It's for, high school teenage kids. This year I was unable to do so, but I'm hoping I'll be able to send her next year.
Was that because of your negotiation skills, or is she just the better?
Yeah, you read the land well. I was not a great negotiator. She likes fly fishing, and I'll send you a picture of a fish she caught, God, 11 months ago, last May, on her second cast. It's like a 25-inch bow. It's an absolute monster. And she had a great time that day. Her two older brothers, I've got a 20-year-old who's a junior at TCU Will, and an 18-year-old is a freshman at Ole Miss, Jack, and they've they are both passionate. Unfortunately, in today's society, I've not had the amount of time with them in my drift boat and floating rivers as, I was able to do at their age because, I mean, as you know, athletics have just gone AWOL, and they're both serious athletes. And it's like you literally dedicate your life to that and do it on the weekends, do it, year round. It's just insane.
Full-time job.
I'm so old. When I was that age, it was like we had like 2 practices a week and 1 game, and they were all on weekdays and weekends were wide open.
Yeah. Well, it's
It's
funny.
different.
I went and visited the Winston fly shop in Twin Bridges in Montana, and they got this sign hanging up right when you walk in, and it says, "If you're too busy to fish, you're too busy." I was like, "Yeah, that's the truth."
Yeah. So Ryan, of course, I know the answer to this because we chatted before, but I would like the audience to hear what brought you to Montana?
Yeah, it was actually my wife who's way cooler than me and should be doing the podcast. She works in the entertainment industry and got the opportunity to work for Yellowstone. And we had actually vacationed in Polson, Montana, 3 months before she got the call for this. And as we're flying back we were living in Los Angeles at the time, we were asking each other, how do we get out to Montana and work and live? Because it is a wonderful place. And not 3 months later, she got the phone call saying, "Hey, there's a position on the accounting team over in Stevensville, Montana. Do you want the job?" And she looked at me, and I was working for a tech company in Los Angeles at the time, and said, "Hey, I've got this opportunity. Do you want to come?" And we were dating at the time. I think we'd been dating a year and a half. So both of us taking a bit of a risk. Her saying, "All right, I want to take this guy I met a year and a half ago to a new state." And I'm going, "All right, well, listen, I want to be there because I love the people. I love the way of life." And we had been talking about this, a couple months ago. So let's make the move. And so we did. And the day before we were loading up, I had a Subaru Forester and we loaded that thing up. The springs are sagging to the ground. I had my Traeger in the back of it. We had our whole life in the back of this damn Subaru, and we drove from Los Angeles to Montana. And the day before, I got a call from the company I was working for saying, "Oh, shoot, sorry, we misunderstood. If you move to Montana, we're not going to be able to keep you employed because we don't have a tax entity set up there. So, you're going to have to quit." I said, "Well, no, you're going to have to fire me." They're like, "Okay, well, then we can let you work for a month, but then, we're going to have to let you go." I'm like, "Okay, that's what it is." And so we got that news, and one of my best friends who I've known my entire life since elementary school, I told him I was living with him at the time in Los Angeles, and I tell him what just happened on the phone, and he looks at me and goes, "Doesn't matter, go. You need to go." I said, "Yeah, you're right. I'm going to go." So we left, we packed up. And, a month later I got fired. I fished a whole hell of a lot that year, worked a couple of jobs in between just to save up enough money to buy an engagement ring for my now wife. And I actually ended up working for her during the winter. So when the fishing got slow, she goes, "Hey, we had a bunch of people leave the job. I need a file clerk to just file paperwork, mail things. It's not glamorous, but it pays." And I said, "Hey, I'm not above work, man. Let's do it." And so I worked for her for 4 months on the show, just as her file clerk, stuffing envelopes and tracking down bills and doing stuff like that. And it was great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a fun
Got it.
experience.
You gotta make sacrifices if you're passionate about something.
You got to take risks, and you got to just have confidence in yourself that you're going to figure it out. And that experience also contributed to, kind of the life we live now, which is just, yeah, things are going to get hard. It's not always going to look pretty. It may get ugly, but if you have confidence and you're humble enough to go, "I'm just going to figure it out. And I don't need the super, high powered, cool sounding job every time. I just need to have some money coming in so I can pay my bills and feed my family." But you can do a lot. And that was the lesson that we learned was, we're willing to swallow our pride a bit, so to speak, and just do what needs to be done. And that opens up a lot of opportunity.
Right, and that was awesome. And I loved your piece on conservation, the mining,
Yeah,
and how Trout Unlimited is smart enough that, you gotta do a little give and take. You can't
yeah,
just strictly oppose something. And it's like, well, let's work together on a better solution that
exactly. It's a
could potentially
solution.
help you more, certainly helps us a ton more. And that was really cool.
Yeah, the solutions piece, you nailed it. It's coming together with solutions, attacking the problem and not each other. It's such a rare thing these days, and it's really nice to see.
Very cool. Very cool. It's so funny you guys have not watched Yellowstone.
Like I said, it's like a chef coming home and their family being like, "All right, now cook for me." It's like,
Yeah.
I don't want to do. I do that all day. I don't want to see it. I don't want to touch it.
I was like a crack addict for the Yellowstone series. I mean, it was like When it's coming out, I'm watching it like that second.
Yeah.
Gotta see it.
But
83. I think,
oh,
was
that
it
was great. I
1880?
watched that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's
Some
funny.
of
My
the series.
my dad came out to visit us while we were in Montana, and he started watching the Yellowstone series. And he's a character. He's a funny guy, and he loves just to kind of be a part of things. And so he's watching the first season of Yellowstone, and he's calling me up, and he's like, "Oh man, I'm seeing all these beautiful places that you're living in, and that we've seen when I was there." And I had to break the news to him. I said, "Hey, Dad, I hate to tell you, but the first season of Yellowstone was shot in Utah. It's not Montana."
Hollywood's got their gimmicks.
Yeah. Well, the funny part is, so all the Montanans knew it, and they looked at it and said, "Yeah, that's not Montana." And so that's why they moved shooting up to Western Montana in Darby, because the people in Montana caught that immediately and went, "No, you're not fooling us."
Yeah, we'll go in the national press.
Yeah.
Say this is Texas.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
That's funny.
Yeah, man, this has been a blast. It's been fun talking.
Yeah, I really enjoy this. Yeah. Hey, Ryan, really appreciate your time. You were fascinating, and I hope the audience enjoyed it. And yeah, subscribe to Smart to Fish Wild. Thanks again. Thanks for spending time with us today on Smart to Fish Wild. I hope today's conversation resonated and gave you something to think about. Please consider sharing this episode with other people who you think might find value. Until next time, get smart so you can fish wild.